Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole Angemi and Maria Q. Kane.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. Today, we're going to talk about some news stories we've been following on Mother Knows Death with our new guest to the show, our friend Scott Duffey. Scott is a retired FBI supervisory special agent who supervised the Violent Crimes Task Force Squad that investigated gang violence, bank and commercial robberies, and juvenile sex trafficking. He was also a municipal police officer in Pennsylvania for 6 years. Scott is currently a director for Wilmington University's Criminal Justice Institute in Delaware, and you may have seen him as a crime analyst on Fox, CNN, and News Nation. Hi, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Nicole. Thanks for having me. Hi, Maria.
Hello. How are you?
It's been a couple weeks.
I know. I am so excited to talk to you because that whole Nancy Guthrie interview came out today, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I don't even know if you got a chance to watch it yet, but we want to ask you some questions just about what it's like being in the FBI. Because I think most of us know people that are cops, but we don't really know a lot of FBI agents in real life. And I have questions too. So how do you get into it? So you were a cop, right? At some point?
Yeah, I was a police officer for almost 6 years before I became an FBI agent, which you do not have to go through that track. I did. So many different tracks to get into the FBI.
And was that, when you were a police officer, did you think that that's what you wanted to do, or did you kind of get the idea once you were already working?
Yeah, Nicole, I had an FBI agent, I think, came into my class when I was 4th or 5th grade. And then we had police officers from the town that I grew up, Norwalk, Connecticut. And so, also living next to a Norwalk police officer, I really got to see that that was something I want to do. And that was really early in life. So it's been on my mind to do one or both for as long as I can remember.
So when you were a police officer, did they recruit you, or did you just kind of stumble into it on your own?
I definitely stumbled into it. It's and into the department that I ended up joining. So I started off in a Catholic seminary. Yeah. And hence, I think we'll get into a little bit later of my connection to task. But I was in the seminary, and knowing that I wanted to be a police officer, and then trying to deal with that split role, if you want to, this calling, so to speak. And so after a couple of years, that I realized, okay, no, I definitely want to go into the law enforcement track. And so I was just applying to any department that had an opening and would offer me an interview. In Lower Merion is where I ended up, and it's just a fantastic partnership.
So how does that work? Do you have to, when you go, there's obviously lots of different branches of it that you could go into. Do you decide what you like and then go into it? Or do you start working there and then say, oh, I would rather work in this particular field? Because you have narcotics and you have some of the stuff that you were doing with the sex trafficking. Like, how did you fall into that exact track?
Yeah, so I would say both in local law enforcement as well as, well, definitely in the FBI. And it's interesting as you're asking that, because I was just at a career day at a local high school here. So and the kids were fantastic, asking what led you into, and what can I do when I get in there? Because there's a lot of forensic young forensic-minded students, and that don't want to go the track of a special agent, but want to get into the forensic aspect. And I was like, well, the FBI is a place to be with regards to so many different avenues of our labs. So you get into the FBI, and pretty much, and the FBI does recruiting. So they're looking for specialized individuals as well. But then I went through the diversified program. The diversified program, I'll just give you like an example. There are the CPA track, there's the JD, the lawyer track, there are specific forensic tracks, language tracks. that they are recruiting, looking for, and then you can go in that track. So under the diversified program, pretty much what gets you into the FBI, you have to have a bachelor's, and it might have changed because it changes. It tries to adapt to, getting recruitments. It was 5 years working experience at the time that I was going through. Then it dropped to 3. It might be 2, and ultimately that's 2 years working full time in anything. It doesn't have to be in any particular type of work. It's a diversified program. And ultimately, they're looking for leadership, integrity, things that are going to help you excel in case management, because you really are, as a case manager, a case agent, you're really leading that case on your own without a whole lot of help, and even as a young agent. So you graduate from the FBI Academy down in Quantico. You then get assigned to one of 56 field offices in the United States. And depending on that field office, small or large or whatever have you, the special agent charge is going to have those young recruits. Hey, you're going to do X amount of time in a violent crimes against children squad. It could be a counterterrorism squad. It could be a white collar squad, a whole bunch of different types of squads. And you're just getting your feet wet. And then typically you might have a supervisor that's vouching for you, say, hey, I want this kid and so forth. And then that's where you may start. Rarely does someone get to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to do this first, unless there's a dire need and nobody else is wanting to go into that new agent's probably going to get that spot. And then pretty much the way it works is, hey, you work something, you work it till you feel like you're pretty good at it, and then you either stay with it or you're like, no, I want to try that squad. And then you wait for an opening. And the way the FBI is with regards to people being promoted and moving about the United States into different programs, that a spot could open up pretty quick.
Do you feel that the high school students had a realistic idea of what that might look like instead of what they see on TV?
No, I think they were ready to, hey, can I join the FBI tomorrow? And do I need to go to college? And I watch this on TV, so I think I'm qualified, right? It's all of the above. But having, and I love going to the high schools and to some colleges, and especially in my university, Wilmington University, to talk to my own students about the FBI. But I would relatively say yes, depending on the age group, that they know what they're getting into. I tell them, I said, don't get out of the media and go right to our website, and you're going to see all the different things that we do. We have a great publicity unit, and they make sure the work of the agent is marketed well, publicized well, and I think you can look at something and say, I want to do that. I wanted to be a polygrapher. I never did. I never went down that road because there were so many other things that you want to do and you can't do them all. So I just made some, and I was in a good office. I was at Wilmington, Delaware my whole career, and it really allowed me to do a lot of different types of cases.
Do they offer internships for kids that are interested?
So there's the honors program. It's an honors internship. It's changed. I will say FBI.gov takes you right there. But the internship typically is you have to apply well in advance. And I'm pretty sure it starts the summer between your junior and your senior year in college. Then they make an exception that if you're going right into a master's program, that it could be, I believe, your summer between your senior year graduation and then, of course, going right into a master's program. With that, you go to DC, and it's a very small number that's selected, and it's a paid internship. You get to see everything about the Bureau right at the heart of where everything goes through, and that is in FBI HQ, which is also close to Quantico and the lab there in Quantico. And so, yes, that's the internship that everybody wants to get into because it's paid and it's right in the middle of everything. They'll then take those students who are intern, and depending on where they are going to college, they could continue that internship throughout their school year. Pick a office that's close to the college that you're in, and then it really, with regards to the non-paid internships, it all depends on the division. So you may have a large office that says, "Yeah, we need you," and an intern will go through the same top secret clearance background that every other employee goes through, and
Wow.
that's why you have to apply well in advance so they can get the backgrounds done.
And they're getting really hands-on experience there. They're seeing the same things that the agents are seeing.
Yeah, it is as if you're an agent or a support. And when I say support, we have so many different levels of support, from analysts to surveillance specialists, photographers, forensic, cyber experts, who are not agents. And they're both agents and non-agents, but because we have agents that will become experts in those fields, but the intern really gets to be a part of everything. They could even go out to a crime scene if they so choose. If that follows into what they are looking to do, especially if they want to continue on their careers into the FBI as opposed to being an intern into something else.
Wow. What's lifestyle like? Like, what is Scott like when he's not when he's not an FBI agent? What I mean is, like, you know, you see the worst crimes ever. You're taking this home with you. Are you able to just go home and be your own person? Are you always kind of on call? Do you have to leave and take trips all the time? And, like, how does that work?
Yeah. So I'll give you from my side, and then it all depends what you're doing. So you could be in a small office, and I don't want to pick on a part of the United States, and all of a sudden it just so happens that they're the busiest. But let's just say, that you could go into the Midwest, the upper Northwest, Southeast, whatever have you, where, you have your known big offices, your LA, your New York City, your Washington, D.C. You go up to Boston, you go, through Philadelphia to Baltimore, then you go down to Miami, your Chicago, right? All your big offices, they are busy, they are staffed, and always doing something. And then of course you have your small offices. We have what is called resident agencies. I happen to be a part of one in Wilmington, which is a small office, a standalone office, and a squad that belongs to the larger headquarters, which to me was Baltimore. So I joined the Bureau before I was married, so I was an FBI agent for about five years before I got married. Met my wife, we dated a couple of years, and I was traveling. I was going overseas, so I went to Dubai, the Republic of Georgia, to Tel Aviv, on different assignments, and as well as training. And then being in the drug world, the fugitive world, and the gang world, those were probably the majority of the types of cases that I worked. Back then, 97 to 2018, which was my career, you were allowed to travel with your case. In other words, let's just say a local law enforcement, a detective, they're working within their jurisdiction, and then they have to go out, find a witness or somebody outside their jurisdiction, but not just next door, next town, next city, but maybe a couple of states away. The department may not have the funds or the resources to pay for that travel. And so a detective might have to reach out to a detective, try to work a relationship and say, would you do this for me? And that happens a lot. And then the FBI, that happens as well. But we pretty much have the option that, hey, your funding is there. This is your case, even though it may be a small part, like going to just interview a witness, go interview that witness. And so you go out and you get to truly have a good feel of what your case is about, what you want asked, as opposed to pawning it off to somebody else and hoping that they ask the right questions and the questions you want answered. So in that regard, there could be extensive travel. And then haven't even discussed the legal attaché program, which is you're going overseas and you're spending a minimum of 3 years. And and so you could be overseas with or without your family. When I say that, if you have a family, you could be going to what it's like a hazardous zone, a dangerous zone, wartime zone. They don't want your family going with you. And so thereby you will travel there. You'll be there without your family. And there are the FBI, I believe, is a truly family friendly place to work. And so they try to make accommodations. Hey, we're going to pay for certain travels. Do you get back and forth every couple of months? But for the most part, it is family friendly, meaning there's flex scheduling. You talk to a supervisor, supervisors are afforded that ability to say, I know what you're doing. I know what needs to be done. And you go and you say, hey, I want to coach my kids' little league. I want to do this. I want to do that. And ultimately, if it allows, then it will be allowed. So it really depends on the work, and what case you're working, because you could be out there in a long surveillance, tied up in a van without any outside contact, or in a car, and it could be, hey, you got a 12-hour surveillance, and you're doing it. So and then let's just say they're all nights, and then you're sleeping during the day. So there, and every family member knows. My wife knew what she was getting into. Hey, you got to go do what you got to do, and sometimes you disappear for a week or a couple of weeks, or in the case of Israel, I went for 3 months when my kids were all below 5. 4 kids below 5.
Wow. That's really interesting. It's
When you were dating her, were you up front? I work for the FBI, because I feel like in some cases that might be unbelievable.
Yeah, I think so. It is for me. Yes. Hey, it's you work for the FBI. You show your badge, right? Your creds. I was looking to see if I had my creds on the table to do the old. And yes, hey, if that's if that's a way in to score a date, surely. And with my wife and I, both her boss and my boss, or her colleague and my colleague, um, were married, and so we got introduced on a blind date. And yeah, the FBI stories can play, and they probably played a bit into our first date. I'm sure she's like, okay, whatever.
I love that. It's the secret to marriage, because I'm married to a fireman and he's not home a whole lot, and it makes it real exciting, and like it's not the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. So let's talk about you. We know that you teach law enforcement officers all the time, but you got a phone call one day that you needed to teach an actor how to be an FBI agent, kind of. So talk about that.
Yeah, so that was an exciting. It's something out of left field. It's not something you expect for, plan for, or even try for. So yes, a good old friend of mine who was one of my trainers in the police department. He calls me, or he sends me a text, and he goes, "Hey, give me a call. I want to see if you're available to work a show, an HBO show." And so I just thought it was a prank or a joke, so I didn't really respond. And then he sends me another text, so I give him a call, and I said, "What's up, Jack?" And he goes, "Hey, I got a buddy of mine who's looking for a Catholic priest who became an FBI agent. Do you?" And I told him about you. And I said, "Well, I was in the seminary, but I didn't get ordained. Do you have to be ordained in order to be a..." And he goes, "No, you're the closest thing, so call him." So I called him, and he was a chief of police, also tasked to this task show. And so he goes, "Listen, Jack is a mutual friend of ours, and so your name came up, and Brad Inglesby, the writer, creator, Mayor of Easttown, Task for HBO, and of course a host of other movies that he's done. I knew of his name, of course, Mayor of Easttown, and so I was nervous. I wasn't prepared. This was not something I had ever thought of landing right before me. So what did I do? I do what a good FBI agent does. I go ahead and I make sure that I know everything about Brad his family. I really got into his family dynamic. You got to make sure, hey, I don't want to be caught, without being able to answer the right questions. And so, um, watched movies that I had not seen. And so that way I kind of knew where he was going. So we met pretty quick at a dinner. He was very clear to say, I'm picking up the tab. I said, okay, that's good. That's a good first start. And so we met at a local restaurant. And I think he missed his calling in being an FBI agent because he came prepared, uh, like any writer, right? Pen and paper, and he was writing right off the bat. And the questions he asked, the detail, the nuances of just life before we even got into what I did as an FBI agent. He really, you could tell he is a character builder in his stuff. And we just hit it off. So I said, okay, was this an interview for a job? But what? And he just looked and he goes, you're hired. Do you want it? You sleep on it. Nope, I don't need to sleep on it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it was that was a great partnership.
What was it like working with Mark Ruffalo?
Having seen many of Mark's things, and then of course I was a big Martha Plimpton fan too, because she was playing the supervisor for Mark Ruffalo. So ultimately she played the position that I retired as a supervisor, a senior resident agent, and then Mark Ruffalo being the task force, let's just call it a coordinator, where he's running the task force as the FBI agent, which I did for so many years. So he is, just like Brad, an astute, a student who just studies you. You don't realize how much somebody is watching you, picking up on your mannerisms, how you say something. So he generally, and I think this show, unlike other shows, FBI shows, etc., they really wanted to hit uh, the nail on the head with the characters, the right characters, a true to the persona of an FBI agent who is struggling in life. Um, and then, of course, there are things that, hey, we understand what you're saying, Scott, but that's not the road we're going down. It's just not going to be entertaining. So, right, you have to then say, yeah, absolutely. So they have to have that license to say, thanks for your information, but we're going to do it this way. Um, Mark is a gem. He's a true, genuine human being who you really get to know on a personal level. He's so caring, just about people. And he was like, hey, I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know your family dynamic. I want to know when you get home, what do you do? I want to know how do you get people to talk to you. And I've seen a few times that he's been interviewed and he talks about empathy, and empathy is I believe a core value for an FBI agent because we're talking to people every day, um, and that's part of the business of getting information and then trying to see can it go somewhere where you need it to go with regards to building a case because often, unlike local law enforcement where they are called, right? They're called to the people's worst moments, worst days, and then begins an investigation. While in the FBI, we do that too, but more so, we develop cases that no one else is looking at, and we try to proactively go build cases. For example, in the drug world, to go after somebody who you believe to be looking to hire somebody for a murder and be able to be proactive and prevent that as opposed to just waiting for somebody to call you.
Do you ever get scared working or trying to catch these criminals that are doing these horrible things, like that they know who your face, and is that ever an issue for FBI agents? Just that they might come back for you one day?
I sometimes I think I'm a little crazy when I say, no, I wasn't scared. I was scared. There are moments that you're scared. And scared may be the wrong word. And there's a sense of fear. And that fear is, I got to really be on my game. For example, we're going to execute a search warrant. I don't know who or what's behind that door. I've done everything in my power to know who and what's behind that door. Hopefully, I or a team of surveillance people have done enough to say, here's the pattern of this individual, and this is when we're going to do it. That's the safest time for all the people who are going to be entering that door. So there is that blood pressure's going up, your heart rate is going up, you're in a line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is typical, and you're thinking, okay, what's going to happen when we get inside? I can't worry. I got to turn every corner. So it is fast moving, and you really have to be on your game in that moment. And then each and every time, it's secured. Everybody's good. Now let's begin that slow, methodical search, right? Bring in the search team. Then you begin for the second one. And you never want to let your guard down to where after you've done it 90 times, 100 times, 200 times, and you're like, this is just like the last one. Because that's when you could potentially get hurt and, of course, hurt those on your team. Those are the moments that, yes, they make you think twice. Am I going to go home after this, right? So when they say firefighters, cops, that they may not return home, that's a real thought that is on your mind, but it's not pervading to the point, and you don't want it to. You do everything in your power to fight that. That's where I do believe in the mental health aspects of those who are first responders, that there's a lot more, and I'm glad to see it happening where, hey, it is up to the leaders, the bosses, the supervisors to take notice and help your crew. So I don't think of all the people I've arrested that I feared them retaliating against me or my family. It's a possibility. It's always a thought. I think that heightened awareness that I have that kind of creeps into my everyday life, even now, 8 years retired. You do lose sleep, but you do learn to adapt, if that makes sense.
That's something that I don't think we think of often. I'd never thought of it at all until one of our friends bought a house previously owned by a judge, and that woman had died and hadn't lived there in 10 years. And our friend only lived in the house a couple years and said people were showing up all of the time. People she sentenced to prison, their family members, etc., to the point where they had to sell the house and move. And I just never even thought about stuff like that.
Yeah, and I know, especially, I believe it was a federal judge a couple of years back who was um, somebody that I believe if she was, or he might have even been on the peripheral of a case. Ultimately, she survived, but I believe her husband and her son. I don't remember if both were. I know they were both shot. I know her son was killed, and then of course it's like things like that that say, okay, judges, regardless of a federal, state, or local, that they're doing things on a regular basis and they should not be retaliated against. And so we started to see those threats come on board. I would say, especially in the last 15 plus years. I knew when I got into the FBI, late 90s, 97, that back then it was, hey, you could scrub your name and address for a Google search. And you just submitted a form and it got sent off from your department on a department letterhead. And then your name and address would be scrubbed. Not today, right? That there might be extreme circumstances, and there must be a lot that's taken for I could see for an undercover agent. But then that rare circumstance, you can't do anything online, because then it's just like you starting all over again. In that regard, yes, you could find anybody, and a lot of personal information beyond the address, is out there. And so I never really feared a retaliation. I've worked some pretty violent crews. I've heard some violent people mention things like, we'll go find him, not knowing if it's me or somebody in my crew. But I think for the most part, it's just I was always hyper aware, not taking for granted when I'm coming and going off duty, but also not getting to the point that, I'm going, getting a helicopter and scaling down to get into my chimney or something like that. It's like, did they see me? No, I didn't. I didn't get to that point. So in that regard, yeah, just being hyper vigilant. I did work a threat case. It was a really good threat case in the sense that this person really probably had the intention of wanting to do harm to a judge who was also very a judge I knew had been before quite a bit of times, and so I really kind of took it to heart too. That when I got assigned to the case, that I was like, Judge, I'm gonna do everything in my power to find this person, and make sure that this person can't be a threat to you. And it ended up being a successful case outcome prosecution, but then it's what happens after their sentence is done. You don't know because you lose track. You don't know what their mental health state is.
This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, we are having an event with our friend Scott that is on the show today, and we are doing a fundraiser at the Center for Forensic Science Research and Education. Scott is going to be there along with our other friend, Joe Giacalone, so it's going to be a ton of fun. Make sure you guys sign up to go, and if you sign up for the Gross Room, you get a really hefty discount on the ticket, which will not only save you money, but then you'll have access to the Gross Room for forever. You'll love it. So check that out.
Head over to thegrossroom.com now to sign up. Well, going off of that, so let's transition into some of the news stories. So as of the day we're recording this, Savannah Guthrie has just released her exclusive interview with Today. And part of that interview, she had discussed a moment where she spoke with her brother, and they thought she could possibly be the reason for her mother's abduction. And others have criticized them online for a segment they filmed over a decade ago showing her mother's bedroom and how they basically gave them easy access and insight into their life. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I've offered a lot of commentary on Nancy Guthrie, and I've also seen a lot of commentary, a lot of what, and as you could see in your professional lives with regards to covering things like this, that I think there's any one scenario could stick, because there are so many anomalies, so it's not your typical course. So with that being said, how do you reverse going back? We're living in a life of our lives are online. We can all be found online, and then of course found where you're living. And so things like doing a news story of a family, like Savannah did with her mom, and I've seen a few of those clips in a restaurant, and the local restaurant, and of course in her house. And you would never imagine that, because there are shows everywhere, right? There are shows everywhere where they, especially in the world where everything is almost like a documentary and etc. We're filming from our houses, and people are looking, and they're like, is there something in there that I like, and can I find where that is? There are people like that have always been around, but to change your life, or to, I can't blame her, and I hope she doesn't. And that, to me, every victim that I've come across who says I could have done something different, I do my best to say, don't blame yourself. There are people out there that you cannot protect and should not worry about trying to protect. So her mom, whatever story you want to cover, and it happens to be in a house, okay. In that regard, I could see somebody in the fraud aspect taking advantage. This is where I believe, with regard, and I saw something about, she believed at least 2 of the letters might be true. I believe they're bogus, and I stand to be corrected when the truth comes out, because we're all speaking from public knowledge as opposed to what law enforcement knows. However, I can see there's plenty of people out there who are willing to pounce on you and take every dime you've ever made based upon a vulnerable moment. And so thereby, she's gone, she's missing, everybody is in just tuned in, and not to mention every fraudster out there to say I can take advantage of this. And they have no thought whatsoever for the victimhood of the family, the victimization, and they exploit it. They love exploiting it, and we just see so much out there with regards to this. So that's why I could see them going back and using things on anybody to say, I know things, I was there, I kidnapped your mother, I know, while they might be using past tape. So I would say that's the life you live. And Nancy, her mother, knows that, right? And she's a willing participant in what should have been just a fantastic piece of family history for all to see. And so I'm believing, though, that the culprit or group of people, I do think it's more than one. However, this person, I think, is a little more attached. I think there is knowledge of the home, right? Targeted versus random. Just somebody who comes up in the dark and says, I'm going to hit that house. I do believe there was some recognizance, there was some surveillance, there was some intel. And then, of course, you go back and do your online searches to see if you can gather any more information. I know I don't know if they've exhausted everybody, but I would venture to say somebody had a connection to that home in recent time. That could be within the year. I don't think you're going to go further past. Somebody was already idealizing something, and then got into the home perhaps before, legitimately, and then it's like, okay, wow, now I know, I have my sights on something. I, you know, I'm on the fence with regards to, was this a kidnapping gone bad? It's possible. It's absolutely possible. Or was this something that I want something inside that house and it went bad? Um, and even I question myself on that, because home invasions take place in my world all the time and they don't make the news. And so people are shot, people are hurt, and that's that. They went in there for an object, whether it be money, drugs, something valuable. Very rarely to go in there with the intention of hurting somebody, because that, and boom, but people get hurt as a result of the transaction of a weapon that's inside the house or a weapon that's brought into that house. So in seeing that, the victim is always there. The victim is always left behind. And so that's why I could see, was Miss Guthrie a target of a kidnapping? And what was the reason, the motive for that kidnapping, remains to be seen. And of course, the letters come out. I believe those letters, just from dealing in so much fraud, the urgency, etc. I just don't see it, where you've done all this to target a fairly high-profile individual. If Savannah was the target, let's go after the mom to get to the money, or perhaps her own, whatever. I don't know what her finances are, and so thereby, it just didn't work out that way, and now you're left with, as we have seen with kidnappings and kidnappings for ransom, that people have died, and they have died tragically, whether they fought their way through it and it wasn't part of the plan of the kidnapper. I'm just going to return this loved one back to you in exchange for money. So that's why it makes sense in regards that she was kidnapped for ransom, and then maybe the the ransom never got off the ground, never really played itself out because something very tragic and very bad happened to her at the onset. That's a strong possibility in my mind. And that why take her? Why not just leave her? The possibility is they either wanted to continue to play out that kidnapping ransom. It just didn't work out when they got to their whatever their secondary point was, or there's too much evidence that they believe they would have left behind, and so it was easier for them to take Miss Guthrie. All those things that I imagine every investigator playing through this. Of course, the investigators who are inside get to see what that crime scene looks like. Do we even know if there was, because I've heard conflicting statements, a forced entry?
So I don't know if you got a chance to see that part of the interview that she did with, I guess it was her first one, right, Ray, with Hoda Copy Today?
Yeah.
So she said specifically that she went all the way back from when she got the phone call in New York City, the whole day. And she said that her sister called her and said the mom was missing, and they had went to the house and the back door was wide open and there was blood on the porch, and there was, like, you have denial at first that it's really happening. So she said at first they thought, let's call the hospital and see if she had a medical emergency in the middle of the night, and they just took her, and it looked like she was taken, and nobody tried to even close up the house. She had her pajamas on, she didn't have shoes on or anything. So I mean, they had to have broken that door, right? I mean, to leave it open like that.
Well, so that would be the question, because I did see, and of course, I have purposely broken down doors to get into homes, and it's a beholden to me that if there's not an adult left in that home, that I have to pay, and we have funding for it to make sure that that house is secure. So I board up the house, door broken or window broken, I make sure I call out a locksmith or whoever contractor to come out and fix that. So I've seen enough pictures, and I get what is being said. The door was wide open. Was the door broken? Was the lock broken? I can definitely see, and this could go to the single aspect, single person. So the door's wide open because now I am removing, and I was always very careful to talk about, hey, we hope is eternal. I hope she's alive. I hope to this day she is alive. But as inwardly, I'm thinking the worst, and so if the door is propped open, I could see that being okay. We have to remove Miss Guthrie. And so, like anything else, you're removing an object from your house, a piece of furniture in or out, you prop open the door. And so thereby, if somebody felt they'd had to prop open a door, however that may look, you prop open that door to remove, if that being that Miss Guthrie. And so do you know if she talked about any type of damage? Because if it was a door propped open, which if my door is propped open, I'm thinking something is awry, something is wrong. But if there's no broken door, no broken window in that door to reach in and open up a lock or something else, and that door was able to be secured, then yes, it's telling that the door is wide open, and so, and of course that's most likely the exit point. But what was the entry point? And if there's nothing that was broken, I would be hard pressed to believe that she leaves her doors unlocked or windows unlocked. And so that's what would bring me back to, especially at that time of night, that somebody was familiar with something, whether having a key, especially that would go back to somebody had a connection to the house employment-wise and was able to ascertain a key. And then, of course, the exit is always going to be typically quicker than the entrance. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of time spent going into the house. I want to make sure I get in undetected. Um, even if I'm going to come in roaring with guns and break down a door, there's a lot of planning that goes into that to make sure which door am I going to go. Is that door? I want to make sure that door doesn't have some steel bar, because then it's going to be futile for me, and I'm going to look like an idiot when I go to break something and I can't break it. So, but now that I've done the act, that is, I've committed my crime, and whether they went in there with the intention of removing her safely, soundly, and then, of course, to return her once there was ransom, they would want to do that as safely and expeditiously. If things went bad or they intended to go in there to cause great physical harm to her, you are now, the action has taken place and you now want to get out. And so that's why I could see it's happened. We need to get out of here. And we're not sure if the police are coming. We're not. And not only that, you're not just coming in on your own, as we saw the Nest doorbell of that individual kind of nonchalantly playing around with the camera. You now have committed a crime, and so you want to get out and get away without leaving anything known behind. And now you're taking Miss Guthrie with you, just for the sake of saying, dead or alive. Alive, you have to worry about is she going to be screaming? Is she going to be yelling for help? Is a neighbor? And then if she's deceased or unconscious, your job is, I need to get out of here and I can't be connected to this crime. So your plan has changed to the point that your tunnel vision is become very tunneled, and you're looking to get out as quick as possible. So I can see, once you're out, you're out. Don't worry about the door or anything else.
I am confused because the doorbell footage we saw, I believe, was from the front door, and the blood was there, but then they're saying the back door was open. And I don't think there were any reports that we know of yet of the front door having any damage. So I'm wondering if that guy took the camera off and was having a hard time getting in, and then went around back, and then ended up taking her still out the front door because of where the blood ended up being. It's a confusing picture overall.
It is. It doesn't. It there, and that's where, as we try to make guesstimates of the scene, because there are certain things, and I don't even know if they know them, as opposed to keeping them close to the vest. So it's pretty easy, right, to say there's forced entry. A door was compromised, a window was broken, and that's how entry was made. I've seen pictures of especially in the FBI, going back up to the rooftop. Is it possible there was a rooftop entry? I don't know, ventilation or whatnot. Would there be access into the home through the rooftop? I just don't know. However, until somebody in law enforcement says that the timestamp of that individual who we see on that Nest doorbell camera was this time, and thereby they believe, that is most likely the first time an individual is arriving to commit this, and we know at least a home invasion. It seemed to me, watching this individual, that they were not scared. They did not seem to have any sense of urgency to their footstep. They now noticed they are on camera. So if this was the first time arriving from a car, van, from the street to the house, you go to the front door and you notice that camera, and just like mine, when mine goes off, you'll see the little red dots. So there's some indication to the person who's approaching. First of all, it looks like a camera. Second of all, there's some sort of illumination that a person should, if they don't belong there, be freaked out. I'm about to commit a crime. I know I'm masked, but where does this camera footage go? This is where I get into, I feel like they already had prior knowledge to where that camera footage goes. So that tells me a couple of things. That that is a person who has already committed the crime or with himself or others, right? And and so now they're just kind of circling the house, covering their tracks. And they're like, you know what? I see a camera. Let me go get it. Um, I'm not scared where it's going because I've already been inside the house and I've already secured the house for my sake. I know that it's not going to alert Miss Guthrie. It's not going to alert her phone. So thereby, I feel comfortable and I'll do my best to get that camera off. That's one, I feel that's plausible unless they have a timestamp that says otherwise. And so thereby, this person is just clearing their tracks, um, as opposed to getting rid of that doorbell camera, and then making their way into the back of the house, and then going out the same door. Then why, like you said, why the blood on the front? Is it possible that she was out earlier in the day, had a nosebleed, or some other normal, you know, if you were to come to my house, all of a sudden I disappear, things that I might not have cleaned up may look like that's part of a crime scene. So it's I'm not entirely sold that the blood leaving or the blood on the front steps was from that moment.
Scott, I'm so happy to hear you say this because I've been saying this the whole time that and I don't know because I don't work in CSI forensics, right? But how do they know that that blood was even related? She had these senile ecchymoses, they're called, on her arms, which are those large bruises that you see on elderly people. And that occurs when you get older because you lose a lot of the subcutaneous fat, which is almost like insulation that protects your blood vessels. So if you just bang your arm against the countertop, those things can bleed profusely. And she's on blood thinners too. So that would just not even be uncommon for a little old lady to have a bleed like that. Who knows, like she could have totally did that the day before. I don't know if there's a way that they could tell the age of the blood on the porch.
Yeah, I would, and if I don't even remember, so right, it's Saturday night into Sunday, right? Because does not show up for her church service. Um, so we're thinking middle of the night or early Sunday morning, and then law enforcement arrives late morning, early afternoon. If
Yeah, I think it wasn't until 10 or 11 in the
Yeah.
morning.
So I, you know, not a blood expert myself by any means, but yes, I can look at the blood. I will treat it in a manner that, okay, that I'm going to collect that after I do everything else I need to do it. Um, but I don't, I would say, what what is that, and why do we think, and maybe perhaps surveillance or law enforcement not even indicating, we're indicating, right? Simply because somebody had said, oh, there's blood on the front porch, that must be where she was removed from. And yet, knowing now more that if the back door is propped open, most likely that is the exit point. I would also imagine that's the entry point, but I'm just not sure. Um, and so why would, if she is being removed from the house forcibly and she is bleeding, why come to the front steps? It doesn't make sense to me. So I could believe that that blood is earlier that day or earlier that week. Um, and she didn't feel the need to clean it up. It's blood. It's something she goes through on a regular basis, like anybody else who gets a bloody nose or something. Unless it's on my indoor, within the interior of my house, I'm probably not going to go out and spray it off with water.
Yeah, I mean, there's been multiple times that I look at my dad, for example, and say like, "Oh, your arm's bleeding. You didn't even notice." You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like
Yeah.
that's just what happens when you get older because it doesn't hurt if you would
Right.
cut your arm like that, you know? Well, thanks so much for being here today. It was awesome, and it was really awesome to hear about your career and just a little bit behind the scenes of what goes on in an FBI agent's life. I mean, it's so much
Mm.
different than most people deal with, and the only reference we have is TV, you know? And I know as far as for autopsy and stuff, it's terrible.
I think if you were consulting more, we'd have a lot better picture of what's going on. I just told Joe Giacalone when he was on to watch this new show on HBO called DTF St. Louis because you
Yeah.
would just
Right.
crack up laughing at the crime lab they have there. It's so ridiculous and
Yeah.
ostentatious, but
It's I started watching it. It is amazing. Um and of course, and I'm sure Joe's the same way. If we look at these, you're kind of forgetting there's a storyline to it. You're supposed to have fun with it. It's entertainment. I'm like, I'm not so sure that would happen that way.
oh yeah, it's totally ridiculous. But you're going to be joining us on April 11th for a lecture for our fundraiser. So can you give any hints to what your lecture is going to be about?
Yeah, so I'm going, as I'm coming up to the deadline here, I'm thinking of a couple, right? So, I've had some interesting cases with regards to where's their forensic connection. And of course, forensics now covers a wide variety, not only your blood, your alcohol level, your toxicology, everything with regards to the body, but of course also with regards to cyber, digital forensics, and so there are two cases that I'm looking at, um, and I won't give them away, so you'll have to buy a ticket and come to April. I believe mine is April 11th. I think.
11th,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the both cases, one being unsolved homicide, which did air on Netflix, and so I still take it with me to this day, and as any investigator who has a cold case and they retire and have to leave it behind for somebody else. And then there's another case that I really dove into um, with the University of Delaware Police Department that was a harassment case that could have been much, much worse, if not an active shooter case. And I just think through great collaboration, a lot of the forensics behind the scene in the cyber world, uh, the digital format, I believe, helped solve the case and ultimately, I think, bring a good resolution to where there was no harm. So that's what I'm bouncing back
Oh,
between two.
We
that's
can't wait.
I know. I really love that. I hear a lot about these cases, like things I didn't know that they could look on your car and get digital information from
Yeah,
the systems in your car.
correct. The
Just
OnStar, or
yeah,
I don't
that
even know if it's OnStar anymore, but I would say any modern car is like a phone. You may have people after watching this going in and ripping out things, disconnecting all the wires in their car, but it's amazing the distance, the RPMs, how fast, the timing, everything is recorded on the computer.
But if you put, they were like one of them I was listening to said that if you plug your phone into your car, like it could grab data off your phone and stuff. It's just like
Yeah, that's true.
things you don't think of.
Yeah,
Not that I'm doing anything, Scott.
yeah, but it's good for law enforcement. It's good for solving crime, but when you really think about it, it is we have given so much of our personal lives away. I'll say it as a sort of a joke, but my mom, God rest her soul, she passed away last summer,
I'm
beautiful age of
sorry.
88, and she had her mental faculties right up to the end. But she would travel from Connecticut to Pennsylvania to visit us, right up till she decided I'm not going over the George Washington Bridge anymore. She just said no more bridges for me. But she would not get an easy pass. I'm like, Mom, it is the easiest thing on earth. You will bypass every line or ever, no more crowded lanes. No, the government is watching and they'll know how fast I was going. And I'm like, yes, that's true. They can determine that. But don't worry about it. They're not looking for you. But just for that sake, you wouldn't get an easy pass. Easy pass. Just those alone can gather so much information.
Everyone's probably freaking out listening
Yeah,
to this.
throwing
know,
out
right?
those easy passes.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
We can't
you.
wait to see you very soon.
Yes,
So
looking forward to it.
awesome. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
All right. Have a good day. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day, and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.